Cool. My name is Chuck, and today I'm here to share with you some of my experience on hiring a technical team to build your first product, aka the little secrets that engineering team doesn't want to know. So the tell you some secrets of the trade. So a little bit about myself. I'm a Malaysian, but I've lived in the US for the last 15 years in this whole little place called New York City. I run a company called Julie.io, where we work with over 80 startups in Silicon Valley, New York, and we've recently opened up an office in Singapore a year ago. And we are working with a couple of local startups and startups in Singapore. Prior to that, I was a developer myself, so I used to build trading systems for Wall Street banks, including Bank of America and Goldman Sachs, before moving over to Silicon Valley to work for a startup called Loot, where I helped Sam Altman's team develop one of the early location-based apps on the App Store, and then eventually got our butt kicked very hard by a little company called Foursquare. I joined Pilot Startups about 2 years ago as one of the mentors, and I've been advising a number of Pilot Startup companies in their San Francisco and Mountain View accelerator program. So that's a little bit about me. So, item number one, I get asked this a lot, and a year ago, I had an interview with DNA, and the question was, if I'm doing a startup, should my first hire be a CTO? I'm sure this is like one of the top questions on most of your mind. That's probably one of the first things that investors ask you as well. Who's your CTO? But before we go into that, let me see a show of hands. How many of you are currently working in a startup? Okay. How many of you are developers? And how many of you are currently looking for a CTO? Okay, that's not developer hands. Okay, so should your first hire be a CTO? As you all know, there are a lot of startups right now in the market. I would say there's a huge imbalance between startups and people who I consider to be at the caliber to be a CTO. So actually a lot of startups that I talk to almost every day, one of the first complaints is just cannot find a CTO. So what do you do when you cannot find a CTO? One possibility is to pick up a book, go online and learn how to code yourself. Another option is to go on Odesk, Elance, look for some freelancers to help you build something out very quickly. And the third option is hire a development team, whether they're local or go to India, Eastern Europe, other parts of Asia, to find a development team that can help you build the product. Or there's actually another option that some people don't, when I talk to entrepreneurs, they don't always think about, which is do a real concierge MVP. So see if your startup solves a particular business problem, see if you can manually solve that problem without having to create code to do that in the beginning. If you're able to offer a certain service manually and it's proven, then you have a very good case when you go in front of an investor, ask to raise money to then build it properly so that you can scale. The next very popular question nowadays is, I want to build a development team. Should I always start by doing this in-house or should I outsource? I get asked that a lot, and of course, if you have a few good buddies together, you're a business person, your good friend is a developer, and you guys are all working for equity, you can build something together. Yeah, by all means, build an in-house team. If you're able to raise money and able to attract the right engineering talent, go ahead and build an team. But for many startups, at a very early stage when you're struggling, it's harder to attract the team. So one viable option is to go outsourcing. But outsourcing is actually quite a dangerous path. So buyers beware. So I'm hoping to share some do's and don'ts with you on what to look out for, what to do, what not to do. That will hopefully reduce a lot of headaches that many past entrepreneurs have gone through. A lot of bad experiences, a lot of time and money lost making these common mistakes. So hopefully you can avoid many of the pitfalls. So what are some questions you should ask when you're trying to evaluate a development partner? One of the things that's very important is how they operate. Do they take your idea, go off to a cave for 3 months, build something, and then come back and show you your product? I recently met a bunch of the Malaysian entrepreneur delegate that went to MaGIC to San Francisco. So I met this very passionate lady who's running a startup. So she gave me an earful of her experiences working with one of her developers here. So it's like the developer is always afraid to show visibility, what's happening. It's like, don't bother me, let me do my work, I'll come back to you when I'm ready. And then you sit there, you're waiting for days, months, you're like, when can I get my product? One thing to do is to see if your team is willing to work in an agile fashion. See how are they transparent in the process. Are they willing to build their code iteratively so that they can deliver something working to you every week or every 2 weeks so that you can see it, give feedback, and then hopefully they can iterate. So development teams that work in an agile fashion kind of helps you de-risk your development project because you can see the progress throughout the whole process. You can give them the right feedback at the right time so that you don't wait for 3 months later and realize that after spending $100,000, they build their own stuff and you run out of money and you push it down. The next question, which is also quite important, is what technology stack do they build on? For those of you who are non-technical founders, it's actually always very intimidating to understand what is the engine under the hood. Traditionally in Asia, you get actually a lot of PHP developers, Java developers, .NET developers. But what's happening in Silicon Valley in the US, actually in a lot of the startup space right now is people are moving away from a lot of this old technology and embracing newer, more rapid development programming languages and platforms like Ruby on Rails, Python Django, Node.js, and a bunch of others. And on the front end, one of the most popular technology now is like AngularJS or React.js. So, if you hire a team that is, building the technology on the more traditional, older technology stack, the downside for you is as your startup starts to grow and you want to attract more startup-ish CTOs or development teams who operate more in a startup environment, there's a chance that many of them will not want to work with your startup because many of these developers do not like to work with a lot of the old antiquated programming languages. But there's a flip side to that as well. Over here in Malaysia, Southeast Asian region, for example, finding a good Ruby developer is very, very hard. And if you find one, most likely a few of the high-profile Malaysian startups will have snatched them up before you get a chance to sit down and coffee with them. So that's kind of a pro and con you have to weigh. It's like if I want to develop a modern stack, is the talent pool big enough to help me as my startup grow? Can I continue to hire and retain these people to grow together with me? So those are questions you need to consider. The other one is, have you ever worked in a startup environment? We've worked with a couple startups in New York where they hired a CTO that came from the corporate space. So there's nothing wrong with business developers, but one thing is they are so used to working for big companies where they have millions of dollars of budget they tend to over-engineer, not all of them, but like there are many of them that tend to over-engineer solutions, or build something that's more complex than what your early startup needs. So even if someone comes from corporate world, always ask them, well, what do you believe in? Do you believe in building the system from day one that can support millions of users and be able to scale in any possible direction? Or are they more of a practical mind where they're open to essentially develop, just focus on the features, of course, write extremely bad code, but just build just enough to be able to go to the market quickly to test the product. So that's very important. Having the right developer mindset, it's very, very critical at the early stages of startup. Who owns the source code at IP? There are some development shops that will essentially say, yeah, the payers will do the work, but we will own the IP and we can do whatever we want with the IP. So, that doesn't mean that it's good, doesn't mean it's bad, it just depends. Some companies will say, okay, since it's going to cost $50,000 to build this stuff, I can give you a discount for $20,000 while I retain the IP and then I can package it and sell it to someone else. I've seen these kind of arrangements happen before. But as a startup, you want to be very, very clear as to what the expectations are. If I pay X amount of dollar, do I own the IP and the source code outright? So that there's no misunderstanding or ambiguity later on in the project. Who owns the deployment environment? This is something that's very important as well. We work with startups that really hate their development team, but they are so afraid to get out and switch because they got held hostage. The development team essentially deploy their production environment. So if they piss off the developers will just turn off the switch and their business goes down. So one advice for you guys is, building from the cloud. If you're building an app, something to Apple, make sure those are all your accounts. Make sure those, you can give access to the developers to your Amazon or whatever servers you're using, but make sure that you own the servers and you have full control over your entire ecosystem. Most technical co-founders are very aware of this, but many times is the business non-technical founders that stumble into these kind of problems. And next is, does your developers have experience developing for the cloud? This is subjective to debate, but nowadays I think, if you're building an application today, you should always think about the cloud. Entrepreneurs that say, some developers like, no, there's no need to use the cloud at this stage and all things like that. That's probably because they don't know how to build for the cloud. But nowadays, the cloud technology has become, mostly because it's become so cheap, it's become so reliable that it's almost a no-brainer, to deploy the cloud. You get the flexibility of easily scaling your application, especially when you use things like Amazon. Where if you hit something very, very popular and then overnight someone features you on TechCrunch and then you get 1 million users in a second, you have the capability to quickly scale horizontally and vertically using technologies like Amazon instead of putting out a service not available area. Next one is cheat codes. I've seen that a lot. You go out to the development team or freelancers and they give you a code, and then you come back, one is 5,000, one is 500, and the other one's 50,000, and you're like, what's wrong? If you all know nowadays, engineers are very, very precious commodity. It's good being an engineer. I have friends in Silicon Valley making $300,000 a year writing code. Even outside of Silicon Valley, if you're a good engineer anywhere in the world right now, you are worth a lot. If you get a extremely cheap code from a developer, there are two possibilities. One possibility is they are very bad at business development, very bad at finding projects. So they are willing to literally subsidize your product, working for you for almost free, so that they have something, they have a portfolio that they can build, which is great. Those are the best value for money you can find. If I were you, I would throw in some equity to this to encourage them. But the other possibility is they are extremely bad. They really suck at what they do, and the only way for the new projects is to give you the cheapest price, and by the time you realize it, they will go on to get the new client. So something to think about. There's no such thing as free lunch here. So if something is cheap, do your due diligence to figure out why it's cheap. And I'll talk more about that as well. It could be sometimes that the assumptions that you make are wrong, are different, which could also lead to a lot of problems during the development phase. Yeah, I think that answers the question. Why, if you put out the requirement, why does someone come back with 5,000 versus 50,000 versus 100,000? Many times it's, I can accept it. Okay, why don't we do this exercise then I'll answer this question. You have this insanely good idea for a product, this is going to be my next billion-dollar company, it's going to be rich, and I'm going to party with something. And you're not a technical guy, so you're hired destined to build a product for you. So I'm going to give you guys a minute, think about it, talk to your neighbors. How do you present your requirement to the development team? So think about it and ask you guys, how does the requirement look like? Or how does the requirement need to look like? Okay, any volunteers? Anyone brave enough to volunteer? Right over there, Mike.
Hi, what about I find a closest example of an existing model or something, and then ask them if they have done it before, and if they have, can you give me an example of how you've done it?
Good point. So, have you done this? Show me an example. Any more? Next. And then I'll go through this back. Yeah, right. I saw some hands earlier. Oh, towards the back. Hey, Shami, can you go down the hand earlier? Yeah.
Actually, I'll be afraid that he will steal my idea. So I will come up with the minimum features I need, and then I'll just tell him that's what I need.
Yep, I've seen a lot of that. Right, next, over here. Oh, there's one here behind you. I will come over to this gentleman.
Hello. Hi, I'm Ben.
Hi.
From Secretary. So, when we wanted to develop our apps, I just want to share a bit of my experience. None of us here, founders here, we are technical guys. No, we're not. So, engaging with the developer, development partner, the first and foremost point that we put forward is for that particular person understand the fundamentals of our idea, because the rest are merely technicalities. Once he gets it, once that particular person got the idea, understand it, so it will be easier moving forward.
Okay, so understanding the essence of what you guys are trying to do,
That's correct.
so that you are in alignment with your developer. Okay, the gentleman over here, sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
How about taking something that's existing in the market and asking him or her to how to do it more efficiently? How will they create that more efficiently?
Can you repeat that again so the rest of the room can hear you?
Basically, point to something that's currently in the market
Yep.
and then asking them, him or her, how do they go about building it perhaps more efficiently.
Good. So it's like, okay, look at Uber. I want to build something like Uber alone. How would you do it better and cheaper and faster? One more. Actually, no, those are great, great points that you guys have, mentioned.
Okay, I just did this. I came up with a video of what the app should look like, what it should do. When I show it to the developer, then he tells me what it's going to do. This is real life example.
So the video, you made your own video, or?
Yeah, I did. So this is about 2 minutes of what we want in the app, how we want the app to behave. Then he'll counter it with what he comes up with and give us a code. That's what happened.
So do you draw diagrams and you narrate?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna address those 3 points earlier. Then if there are more, I love this interaction model. That's actually that triggers a lot of interesting discussion. So shall we do the first question?
Showing them an example of an existing model and asking them if they've done it before and how they approach.
Okay, that's a good point. But the thing is, if you're doing a startup and if you're trying to build something that someone else has already built, and if the developers have actually built the same stuff that you're trying to build, then it's probably you have too many competition out there. So the whole point of to do startup is try to innovate new ideas. Or take an existing idea where the UX is not good enough or it's not fully solving a certain problem and do it a lot better. And you're hoping that the developer has not done it before. Otherwise, you're just reinventing the wheel. What's the second one? Yeah.
Okay, the second point made was I don't want them to know what my idea is. I will give them
I've seen that many times. They'll be like, we're doing this, secretive stuff. It has to kind of send data here and kind of a dashboard there. And after that, you click on it, it shows fireworks. How much does it cost? And after listening to that, I have no idea what you're trying to do. So this is a little unrelated to requirements, but to be very honest out there, nowadays it's very hard to find a truly original idea. Ideas are done a dozen. And usually what I notice, if you work with an experienced entrepreneur, some people have started and sold companies many times, they're actually very open about their new ideas. They will actually tell everybody about it. Because what it does is that it helps you do a lot of market validation before you spend the money building something and realizes that nobody on earth is going to use it. Or maybe you're going to have just 5 users, and just your mom, dad, brother, sisters, fiance. Of course, first-time entrepreneurs are afraid that I have this best idea. When I tell someone, they're going to clone it, or they're going to build it for themselves. Maybe it happens once in a while. The rumor is Mark Zuckerberg did that to those twins. But in most cases, ideas are done a dozen. What differentiates one startup from another? It's like you think about Uber, think about Lyft, think about the other car sharing service that no one even talks about. They're all working on the same thing. Why is Uber doing so much better than everyone else? It's the execution. You can have an idea of something that's already existing that everyone knows about, but people are not doing it well. And where you differentiate yourself is in executing better than them. You build better user experience. Your apps are more efficient. You deliver true value, better value than what they're currently delivering. And that's what sets you apart. It's not the idea. Ideas are great, but if you cannot execute well, you are no different than many of the startups out there.
Okay, the next one is sharing with the technical partner and
The essence.
explaining
Yeah,
the
the
essence of the business model and the product.
Okay, that's actually a very good point. Because if you hire a development team, you need to treat them as your team. They need to be part of, if they are like someone across the fence where you give them limited information, of course you're going to get limited product back once they come back to you. If you treat your team as, part of, the developers as part of your team, you share with them, here's my grand vision, here's what we're trying to do, here's how we're planning to change the world, and this is how we are hoping you can help us get there. This goes beyond just requirements. Requirements is what am I doing? It could be if you're not technical, you say this is my requirement. It could be your development partner actually has a better way to achieve that vision compared to what you're telling them. So if you're just telling them just do A, B, C, even though C and D is wrong, you will get the wrong C and D coming back. So one thing to keep in mind is share as much as possible with your team. And then make sure that they are part of the brainstorming process, along the feedback process. So that's a very good point. I think and then the next one is about doing the video, or is there something before that?
There's something before that about taking something existing in the market and asking them how they would approach it more efficiently.
Yep. So I've seen that. Yeah, that happens a lot as well. People are saying, Postmates is great. I want to do a Postmates for KL, I'll do a Postmates for Jakarta, and things like this. That could be a way to start, but the problem is, the slippery part is, Postmates raised $8 million. They're probably burning tens of millions of dollars a year on engineering costs, on developing a lot of sophisticated algorithms in the back end that you as an early stage startup do not need to do at the beginning. Probably all you want to do is build a very slick app, but at the end of when someone makes a request, you have a bunch of interns running around pushing buttons. So that's a good start to say, tell me how much is going to build something like a Postmates. But what you need to do is to clarify your requirement a lot further, like how far are you going? What does it need to do at the first stage? Where do we stop? Which leads to the second point, which is let's build a video. And so the reason I asked about sketches and all that is it's actually that's a good segue to come back to this. You want to do proper. You want to clearly define what your requirements are. Because if you don't clearly define, if you don't do some product design, user experience design, or trying to map out what your app is supposed to do, I can guarantee you the way you envision Apple, your developer is going to envision an orange or durian. So you need to essentially, and many times people come with one liner and say, here's my requirement, I want to do this, how much does it cost? I start asking them a lot of questions, and then I realize that they themselves have not thought through the product. So if you yourself as a founder have not thought through how the product in fine detail, how everything works, how do you expect the developer to give you a meaningful code? How do you expect the developer to build, exactly what you're expecting when you yourself are not clear about that? So things that to avoid when you're trying to provide requirements. Do not just describe your project in a few sentences and say how much is it going to cost to build. Because I can guarantee you, if a developer actually gives you a quote by that's a big red flag. You want to run away. You don't want to work with that developer because either he or she is very ignorant of the complexity of all the things involved, or they're trying to lowball you into it, and then once you hook, then suddenly you realize, 150% increase in budget after you go into detail. And on the other extreme, you don't want to spend 1 year writing tons of pages of specs, defining every single color, the button should be and all this little detail. I've seen a lot of that actually. A lot less nowadays, but a few years ago I've seen people writing all these big spec sheets. That's the olden way of doing things, and we know that that doesn't work. That's why projects are always late in they always go over budget. And I'll touch more on that when we talk about more about requirements. But then the next one is, I mentioned earlier, do not let your development team go off to build something for weeks without you seeing what's happening. So I'm going to talk about how do you form the proper requirement so that you and your team are totally in sync. So this is what we've done very successfully with many startups. We always say, before we jump into coding, before we give you a code on how much it's going to cost to build something, let's sit down and do a user experience or a product design. Let's put things on paper. Let's sketch. Here's my login screen. Here's, I click here, this happens. I click there, that happens. This is the kind of data that I put in. This is the graph that's going to show the data. And this is how me as a user, we call them user journeys, which is how a user starts on the first screen and journeys through the rest of the application, covering all the interaction models, all the flows, all the complexity, all the edge conditions and use cases. So once you've done this, you can upload the tools like InVision and a couple other tools out there that allows you to create clickable prototypes. This does two things. First, it helps you take the idea out of your head, put it on paper, and I can guarantee when you see it on paper or screen, you will start to have trigger a lot of new thoughts. It's like, oh, I never thought about this. What about that? Do I care about this today, or should this be a version 2? So that helps trigger your thought on kind of better conceptualizing what is it you're trying to build. But at the same time, now you have this wireframe that shows exactly how it actually works. Your developer should now have full visibility into giving you a quote and estimate on how they're going to build it, number one, how long it's going to take to build it, and how exactly it's going to work. So if they do go off in the cave and come back and build something very different, you can say, here's my wireframe, I did not miscommunicate. Here's what you're building me, and these are two different things. So I'm not going to pay you because it's good. So doing proper UX product kind of work up front is actually very, very crucial. It's always cheaper to change wireframe than to change code. And from all the startups I work with, one of the biggest costs of money wasting tasks is reworking, changing, constantly rewriting the code to change the product. And if you've been in the grind, you realize that this actually is one of the most expensive. A lot of money that should not be spent goes into changing the code. And then the next thing you want to do that's outside the requirement is be very disciplined about managing the scope during the development process. Even after the developers give you a code, I can guarantee you, I work with so many startups now, by the second, third, or fourth week, you're going to see a new competitor come into space. And like, hey, we have this cool feature we should include. Or things change, and things always change. So you need to be more disciplined about managing scope, so that you don't say, initially you plan 8 weeks to production, and then after 6 months you're still constantly changing and perfecting the product and never launch. Always over-communicate, you and the developer as well. Make sure that you always keep the developers up to date on what's going on. Make sure that you give very timely feedback during the development process. If something doesn't look right, say right away. Don't wait until the end because it will not look right at the end as well. And also make sure the developers are over-communicating as well. If they feel like they are going to miss the schedule, raise their hands early. Escalate, solve it early. Don't wait. Many teams are like, yeah, we're late, but we'll definitely make it. And most of the time, I guarantee you'll not make the date. If you're late from the beginning, you're going to be late in the end. So make sure there's a lot of transparency. We use a lot of tools like Pivotal Tracker, Asana, and all this. Pivotal Tracker is my personal favorite, where we upload all our user stories there. We estimate each story using relative point estimation. And then from there, we can quickly tell how many points the teams are delivering every week, how many points total to release the product. So you can do the math up front. The tool even does the math for you, but are you on track or not? And using tools like this, whenever your team delivers a story, it forces you or the product manager to actually go in and actually test it and accept or reject the story. So you get very early user validation. And by doing that, you reduce the risk of building the wrong stuff or projects going over budget over time. And then the other thing is, I mentioned earlier, do agile development. Recurring sprints are very important. There are some developers who are hesitant to do that. They're like, I'm busy coding. If you ask me to do a stable build to you every week, then that's going to increase my development time by double. Then you say, maybe you're not the right developer. By doing recurring sprints, you validate early, you validate constantly, and then you yourself feel more comfortable where the things are any time in the project. And then test early, test often. That goes in the same principle. And then next one is how do you think about pricing? Now someone gives you a quote, or when they're working with you a quote, how much should you budget? How much, if it goes into fundraising, how much money should you raise initially, or how much money should you allocate for your initial MVP development costs? So one thing I always advise entrepreneurs is take your brand vision. This is the product that's going to be a big success. Take the scope and cut it in half. Once you cut it in half, cut it again in half. Because to be very honest with you, the brand vision is great. Most of the time you'll run out of money before you even get there. So what you want to do is build a true minimal viable product, a true MVP. I've been in investor meetings where everyone is throwing the word MVP around. And this company was trying to, this is our MVP, it's going to take us 6 months to build. And the investor turned around and said, that's not an MVP, you're building a full-scale product. So when you say MVP, you must be a little ashamed about how it looks or how it works. But it still solves the problem. The most important thing is we're building software, we're building anything, we're building technology to address the problem, to solve the problem, to reduce costs, to streamline a process. So there are ways to perfect it, but maybe you don't need to have all that perfection from day one. Maybe you just do a small part of it. And even if your MVP looks like crap, or it just does one thing, but it does it very, very well, and people are willing to pay you money for it, that means you're on the right track. So then you can go and raise more money, or you can invest more money into building up the rest of the application. But if you put something up and no one besides your mom is using it, then you know that this is not going to get traction. I need to pivot. I need to think about should I just give up, try something else, or change direction, or tweak the features to see what's wrong. So early validation is very, very important. So therefore, always try to start with a minimal number of scope. Do a true MVP. Don't build features that you do not yet need. Do not build for millions of users that you don't yet have. Many times people are like, oh, I need to do all this because what if I have a million users? This is not going to work. If you have a million users, great. Investors will be lining up with a dollar, chasing you to the bathroom, just trying to give you money. Then it's a good problem to have to worry about that then. But what you want to worry about now is how do you survive this phase? How do you get to the next stage? Build, make sure the function works well, make sure it's complete. If it serves 100 happy users, 1,000 happy users, great. And when you have 100,000 happy users, then slowly start to refactor and start to scale the application to support your next 10,000, next 100,000, next 1,000 users. Do it in step phase. Don't do it from day one. And the next one, don't build for multiple platforms. That's always a very big debate I have with entrepreneurs. They'll be like, I want to build this app. From day one, it has to be on Android, it has to be on iOS, it has to be on web, it has to be a mobile web, it has to work on Apple TV. And I was like, well, why don't we start with iOS first? Cannot. Start iOS and only get 30% of the user, giving up the 70%. So I said, okay, then let's start with Android, since Android in Malaysia has 70% market share. But then I'm losing the 30% of the Apple users. So here's the thing, before you even prove that a single Apple user wants to use your app, wants to pay you money, you need to validate that. So if you build for multiple platforms at the same time, number one, you're burning a lot of money. Your burn rate is going to be extremely high. Number two, the moment you release your tree, your web, Android, iOS, you start to realize your users are not using something this way, they're using it the other way. It's like, oh crap, I have to go change the code in 3 different places. It gets very expensive very quickly. So, I am a strong believer that I want to go after, this is my user, this is my envisioned user profile, this is the people I want to go after. Even though they are small, if I start, for example, I start iOS, they're small, they're not everybody, but I want to validate from there. And then once I've proven that people really like it, I can just quickly take all the features that they like and clone it in Android, clone it on the web, clone it on all the other platforms. And I think that's a much smarter way to control your budget, but also to have it self-scope and place things up. If you forget everything I've said today, don't forget this triangle. This is the golden triangle, the Bermuda triangle. This is the law of physics. In software development, there are 3 constraints that you cannot break: scope, cost, time. Entrepreneurs or Steve Jobs who want to bend the reality would always say it's always cost and time, or it's only cost. If you want to add a lot of features, you have a big scope. Your cost is going to go up, and your time is going to go up. They're all interconnected. So if you want to really control scope, you want to control cost. Make sure you have small scope, something that's doable in a amount of time. So it gets done faster, it's going to cost less. Sometimes you say, the scope is constant. Say we put one of the variables constant. So the scope is constant, and you say, the developers come back and say, oh, it's going to take us 8 weeks to build it. Then you say, no. It has to go out in the next 3 weeks because I'm presenting at WWDC. So you more than half your time. So something has to be. So if you're engineers, we always talk about the mythical man-month. If you don't know about this, look it up. It's like adding more people to a day project later, but that's a separate discussion. So maybe it's possible to add more developers to keep the same scope, reduce the time, but then what happens? The cost goes up because it's not linear. If one developer takes 6 weeks to build something, 2 developers does not equal 3 weeks. I get it all the time, like, show more people in, half the time, a third of the time. It doesn't work that way because the bigger the development team, they're going to step on each other's toes a lot more. There's going to be a lot more coordination required. There's going to be always one developer that breaks the build, and then everyone is sitting there waiting for him to fix it. So the bigger the development team, the higher the cost. So you have to find the right balance. So, if you go to a developer who's like, I want the cheapest, and I want the fastest, and I want all this feature in the world, you're violating the law of the Bermuda triangle, or the Chook triangle. Next one, always a subject of debate, quick and dirty code versus clean, extensible code. We talked about that earlier, right? Millions of users, code that does everything, or throwaway code. You have to be, when you're working with developers to make a decision on how should you build the first MVP, this has to be very, very clearly discussed. Otherwise, you may not get enough. There are some times when it makes sense to do quick and dirty. Say, I have this idea, I'll present WWDC in 3 weeks. That's what we did at Chook. When we used to build the Foursquare location service on feature phones. And then one day Apple announced that not Apple announced, but we were approached by Apple to say, the iPhone is coming. Do you guys want to build something for the first App Store release after the iPhone came out? And we decided at the time there's no way we could build something extensible. So we went to clean and dirty. That was an explicit decision, which allows us to build. But the downside to that was that after our app became quite popular, we got millions of users, we realized that we could not easily, every new feature we add breaks everything else. So what happened is we spend time, months and refactoring, rewriting the whole system in the front end and back end. And then during that time, this company called Foxconn came along. The rest is history. But then on the other hand, you have developers who think of code as art. So as art, you cannot create crappy art. So therefore, you have to spend time writing the best code. And they're refactoring their state login screen 5 times because it has to be perfect. So you need to watch out for that danger as well. You need to strike a balance. And what I always tell our team, what we do with our projects and our clients is that we write code that is clean. We solve the immediate problem, the new feature that we're targeting. We make sure that the code is easily refactorable as the scope change, or if you need to get more users, if you need to support more users. But we never always over-engineer. Never over-engineer from day one. Because the whole point is early validation. Next one is co-located versus remote teams. I think it's 5, 6, 7 years ago, in Silicon Valley, you tell your investor that my developers are remote, they will be like, you're crazy, what can I give you money? All your engineers have to be in Silicon Valley. But you guys notice a trend in the world right now, especially in the last few years. Actually, more and more teams are distributed. And in fact, many startups that we work with, the co-founders themselves are distributed. There's a fashion startup we work with where the CEO is in New York, the CTO is in Barcelona, their designers are somewhere else, and our developers, I'm in New York and our developers are in Vietnam. So that's the way the world is evolving right now, because in engineering, in the business that we're in, people can work from anywhere. But there are also slippery slopes. So if everyone works in the same room, it's great because if you code something and you realize, hey, you never thought about this, you can turn around, you can huddle, you can whiteboard, you can figure things out very quickly. But if you don't have the luxury of having everyone co-located, if you have to go the distributed team route, nowadays there are many companies, and we've done it 80 times already, and done it quite successfully. What you want to do is make sure you have a very good process to make sure how the team communicates, how things are delivered, and what you need to do up front. So for example, make sure that you do product design up front so there's no ambiguity, because if your team is on a different time zone than you are, and if they are stuck because they need to check something, they need to validate an idea with you, you don't want them to waste 8 hours for you to wake up before you answer the question. So with piloted this, we call it distributed agile process. I've published some papers online, so you guys can do me on LinkedIn if you can actually read some of the papers we've written on how do you work as an effective distributed team. So distributed is possible, but just make sure that you have the right process in place, so that hopefully your distributed team can be as effective as a co-located team. So this wraps up the content part. I don't know how we're doing on time, but I open up the floor for any questions.
Alright, so just now you say something about the MVP is something that we should be ashamed about, right?
A little bit ashamed about it.
Yeah, a little bit ashamed about it. But then, in our region, something that we are ashamed about, most of the time, people won't use it. And then we are not as forgiving as the people in Silicon Valley. They can just say, oh, this is a startup, so yeah, give them some time. But then our own people doesn't really that forgiving. So how do we deal with that?
So maybe if they are not as forgiving, maybe if you give them a tool, they say it's not good enough, I don't want to use it. Maybe you're not really solving the problem that really pains them. Because if you're really solving the problem that helps them save a lot of money, or help them cut something in half, people will use it. And if like I say, if people will not use it, maybe that's not the right thing.
do you recommend us some tools for us to manage startup projects like agile tools and also some communication tools for distributed teams?
Usually for UX, we use a tool called InVision that it's actually very InVision at INVISION@.com. It's actually a great UX prototyping tool. For project management, we usually use Pivotal Tracker. We use Asana or Trello, Trello. For communication, Skype works great. When it doesn't work, we know how to make it work. But Slack has been getting very, very popular in the US. It actually cuts down a lot of emails internally for people that use Slack. So that's a great tool to use. Next, any more questions?
How to train junior developer and prevent them from running away when
Lock them in the dark room and make sure grab taxi from the company. That's a good question. And that's actually what we do as a company. Everyone that joins our company, we have an in-house 8-month coding boot camp to train them up properly before we release them to the cloud to do something that runs. The best way to train a developer is kind of a mentorship model. You have senior developers who are very, very good. That's your Jedi master, and make sure that you have a lot of pipelines. Sitting there, do pair programming is actually very effective, so that the junior person can see how the senior person solve the problem. There are many ways to solve the problem. What's the most optimized way? What's the most easy way? So coaching, grooming is actually the best way. And actually then have the junior developers actually go jump into a hard problem to solve, and then later on, give them feedback. Why do you do it this way? Here's a better way.